and the dawn of humanity. Within the sacred bounds of Eben's legacy, Adam and Eve bore two sons, Cain and Abel, each ordained with his own calling and destiny. Cain, the elder, was marked by the soil's toil, his life dedicated to mastering the earth, a symbol of mankind's dominion and struggle. Abel, the younger, walked in the ways of gentle stewardship, tending to his flock with a shepherd's heart, reflecting the Creator's nurturing aspect. Their destinies intertwined yet distinct. They stood as archetypes of human endeavor, embodying the dual paths of humanity's journey under God's watchful eye. Amidst the verdant fields and pastures, the tranquil scene unfolded as Abel, for the shepherd's care, tended to his flock, each sheep a testament to the Creator's provision and Abel's faithful stewardship. His hands, though calloused, were gentle as he guided his sheep, the animals responding to his voice with trust and familiarity. In Abel's care for his flock, there was a reflection of divine love, a mirror of the Heavenly Father's care for his creation. The pastoral scene was a vivid tableau of peace and harmony, a glimpse of Eden's tranquility restored in the heart of a fallen world. Cain, a son of the soil, labored in his fields with a diligence born of a deep connection to the earth. His hands stained with the earth were a testament to the sacred covenant of sweat and toil between man and creation, a covenant established when Adam was first placed in the garden. Cain's work was more than mere cultivation. It was an act of obedience, a fulfillment of the divine mandate to subdue and replenish the earth. And yet in his heart there brewed a storm of discontent, a seed of envy, watered by comparison, threatening to overshadow the nobility of his labor. In the fullness of time, as ordained from the beginning, the brothers brought forth their offerings to the Lord. This sacred ritual, a testament to their devotion, was marked by solemnity and reverence. Keen with the fruits of his labor, the ripest grains and fruits, the vibrant tapestry of nature's bounty, stood as a symbol of man's partnership with creation. Abel, bringing the firstlings of his flock, bare wool, glistening in the sun, offered a symbol of innocence and purity. And the whole back by before saying they were safe. Their offerings laid before the Lord were more than mere gifts. They were expressions of their hearts, mirrors of their souls. As a divine presence hovered over the sea, discerning the hearts of the brothers, the Lord looked with favor upon Abel's offering, but upon Cain's he did not. And this divine judgment, far beyond human understanding, pierced the veil of Cain's heart, revealing a darkness working within. The Lord's favor on Abel was not a rejection of Cain, but a test of his faith, an opportunity to rise above the human frailty of envy and pride. Now, when I say was the guy by saying that move, he said that there is no committee the way he said. As the sun slowly dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the fields, Cain's heart grew heavy with unspoken sorrow and brewing anger. The beauty of the twilight, which once brought him peace, now echoed the growing turmoil within his soul. The ground he had toiled so lovingly seemed to mock his efforts, its fruits deemed unworthy in the sight of the Almighty. And in this moment of despair, Cain stood at the crossroads of choice, a battleground between the higher call of righteousness and the lurking shadows of sin. The stillness of the night offered no solace to Cain as he wrestled with the torment of his thoughts. In the quiet of his dwelling, the weight of rejection and unfulfilled desires lorded his spirit, and requested the stars above, shining brightly, seemed to him distant and cold, uncaring witnesses to his inner conflict. This night, a crucible of his faith called upon him to look beyond human understanding, trust in the Lord's wisdom, and find peace in divine sovereignty. Met the darkness of envy and bitterness clouded his vision, obscuring a path of humble submission and godly reverence. With the dawn came not the light of clarity, but the lingering shadows of the night's turmoil.
For Cain, once a proud son of the earth, now bore the heavy burden of unresolved envy and growing resentment.
The fresh morning air, which should have brought renewal, seemed to him stale and suffocating, a reflection of the inner decay of his spirit. In this crucial hour, the need for divine intervention was paramount, for only the grace of God could quell the storm raging within him and guide him back to the path of righteousness and love. The Lord's favor upon Abel's offering kindled a fire of envy in Cain's heart, a flame that would soon consume reason and fraternity. This divine preference, intended as a blessing, became a catalyst for a darker journey within Cain's soul. The seed of envy, once planted, began to twist his perception, turning a brotherly bond into a chasm of jealousy and resentment. This envy that took root in Cain's heart is reflective of a grave malady prevalent in modern society. It leads to unhealthy comparison and a deep-seated discontent, eroding the soul's peace. As Cain envied Abel, so do many today envy the success and happiness of others, losing sight of their own blessings and the unique path God has laid out for them. Cain's countenance fell, overshadowed by a dark cloud of jealousy that took deep root within his spirit. This was not merely a momentary lapse, but a profound spiritual shift, marking the beginning of a path veering away from God's light. And one could see the turmoil of the soul, grappling with feelings that could neither justify nor quell. As Cain gazed on Abel's accepted offering, his heart turned cold, bitterness seeping into its chambers. The sight of his brother's favor with God became a mirror, reflecting his own sense of failure and rejection. His bitterness was a poison, spreading through his veins, corrupting the love and respect he once held for his brother. The fields that once were a source of pride and joy for Cain now echoed with the whispers of his brother's favor in God's eyes. Each blade of grass, each ripe fruit, seemed to speak of Abel's success and Cain's perceived inadequacy. The very earth, which he had tended with care, now became a reminder of his rejection and unfulfilled desire. Cain's hands, once a symbol of pride and accomplishment from his labor, now clenched in silent fury, and he was ready to create charge. He was made an oxen. I knew that the fire was in so many. The soil under his fingernails, once a mark of honor, now felt like the residue of his failure and envy. As the sun set in the distance, its departing light seemed to mock Cain's unaccepted offering, casting long shadows over his heart and mind. In the final sense of the end, once a symbol of the end of a fruitful day's work, now signified the diminishing of Cain's own sense of worth and belonging. The shadows of doubt stepped far beyond the horizon, clouding his vision with resentment and despair. Cain's mind wandered through dark and treacherous thoughts, straying further from the path of righteousness. And he entertained notions of injustice and revenge, each thought a step further away from God's teachings of love and forgiveness. This mental journey was a dangerous divergence, a road that led away from the light of divine grace and towards the darkness of sin. Cain's world, which was once filled with the simple joy of cultivation and stewardship, now seemed barren and devoid of meaning. The earth, which had generously yielded its fruits under his care, now appeared as a barren wasteland of his unfulfilled aspirations. This dramatic shift in perception was a testament to how envy can empty even the richest of lives from its joy and purpose. In the presence of Abel, Cain could not bear to meet his gaze, a mirror reflecting his own perceived inadequacy. This avoidance was more than mere discomfort. It was an admission of the turmoil within. Cain's inability to face Abel was symbolic of his reluctance to confront the darker emotions brewing within his heart. The whispers of envy grew louder in Cain's mind, overshadowing the voice of reason and brotherly love. These whispers were insidious, painting Abel's success in an increasingly sinister light, and justifying Cain's growing animosity. This internal cacophony muffled the gentle voice of conscience, steering Cain further from the path of reconciliation and peace. Within Cain, a fierce battle raged, torn between the desire to rise above his darker impulses and the temptation to succumb to them. And this internal struggle was a microcosm of the eternal battle between good and evil that rages in every human heart. And Cain's soul stood at a crossroads, each choice a step towards redemption or ruin. And the night brought no solace to Cain, only a restless turmoil as the serpent of envy tightened its grip. The darkness of the night mirrored the darkness encroaching upon his soul, each hour a reminder of his growing estrangement from God as he tossed and turned. The stillness of the night was shattered by the turmoil within, the stark contrast to the peace that eluded him. In the quiet of his dwelling, Cain's thoughts turned relentlessly, a tide of bitterness and resentment. Each thought is a wave crashing against the shores of his sanity, eroding his ability to see reason or feel empathy. And this relentless tide was not just a torrent, but a barrier, separating him from the healing grace that could still his troubled mind. The stars above, once a source of wonder and beauty, now seemed to taunt Cain with their serene light. Their unchanging brilliance stood in stark contrast to the turmoil within him, a celestial reminder of his own turbulent emotions. These stars, which had once guided shepherds and travelers, now seemed to mock his path, a path that had strayed so far from its intended course. Every rustle of the wind, every creak of the wood in his home, whispered to Cain of his rejection and Abel's success. These sounds, once the comforting symphony of rural life, now became a chorus of reminders of his own perceived inadequacy. Each whisper was a gust of wind fanning the flames of envy and discontent, a relentless echo of his inner conflict. Cain's world, once vibrant and full of color, was now painted in monochromatic schemes of gray and envy. The vivid greens of the fields and the bright hues of the harvest lost their luster, overshadowed by the darkness clouding his vision. And this loss of color was symbolic of the loss of joy and perspective, a world viewed through the distorted lens of jealousy and bitterness. The burden of unspoken anger and resentment weighed heavily on Cain's shoulders, bending him beneath its oppressive force. And this weight was more than physical. It was the heavy load of unconfessed sin and unyielded pride. Each step he took was labor, each breath a struggle, as the weight of his unspoken grievances and unrepented heart grew heavier. In the solitude of his heart, Cain wrestled with feelings he could neither accept nor fully understand. This inner conflict was a tempest of confusion, guilt, and defiance, a soul adrift in a sea of moral ambiguity. His inability to reconcile his feelings with God's truth left him isolated, a man divided within himself, a heart in turmoil with no anchor in sight.
The dawn brought no relief to Cain, only the stark reality of a new day, laden with the same inner conflict.
Of the sun and the rising sun, which should have signified hope and renewal, only illuminated the depths of his inner strife. As the light of the new day spread across the land, it cast a revealing glow on the unresolved turmoil that lay heavy upon Cain's heart. He backed inside a trumpet that he can recourse and help me with comedians consider. The Almighty's voice resounding in the field was not just a call to Cain, but a trumpet blast. It was a divine declaration that our Creator is not a distant observer, but an active participant in the affairs of his children. Each word from God was a drop of truth, a chance for Cain to wash away the filth of envy and step into the cleansing river of repentance. This moment was a vivid portrayal of God's boundless grace, his readiness to forgive, even when sin has deeply entangled the human heart. Here God stood as the loving Father, reaching out to a wayward son, offering him a way back to the fold, to the safety and love of his presence. As God unveiled the truth of sign's nature, he also illuminated the path to victory. His warning to Cain was a roadmap to overcoming the beast of sin that crouched at his door. It was an invitation to engage in the greatest battle ever known, the battle within the human soul. Here in this sacred encounter lay the fundamental truth of the gospel. The victory over sin is not won by human might or will, but by yielding to the power and grace of God. In this moment, God was offering Cain not just a warning, but the keys to the kingdom, the secret, to conquering the darkness that threatened to consume him. They pushed the following in. Then Cain again colleges, he must have leave to stem from the aquazin in return to his process. And all of these, so valuable, his heart calloused by envy and pride, had become impervious to the sound of God's voice, the voice that had once walked with Adam in the cool of the day. This resistance was more than a mere act of defiance. It was a tragic dance to spiritual death, a dance that led him further away from the source of life and life. In Cain's defiant stance, they see the sorrowful picture of humanity's propensity to choose darkness over light, to turn away from the very source of our salvation. Is that the analogue in the landscape is an evidence organist. The gospel puts the analogue is somehow maybe this was not just Cain's personal tragedy, but a collective one, a mirror reflecting the rebellion inherent in the human condition.
His choice to ignore the voice of God was emblematic of a world
where the whispers of temptation often drown out the clarion calls of righteousness.
In Cain's fall, we see our own fall, the universal tale of human beings turning away from eternal truth, seduced by the fleeting shadows of worldly desires. In this divine dialogue, the Lord offered Cain not just a warning, but a prophecy, a glimpse into the future, should he continue down this path of envy and rebellion. This prophecy was a merciful revelation, a final attempt to jolt Cain out of his spiritual slumber. It was as if God himself was painting a picture of the desolate landscape that lay ahead should Cain choose to let sin reign in his heart. See, the Lord demonstrated his role as the master of time and history, fully aware of the consequences of every human choice, and earnestly desiring to steer his children away from ruin. Cain's story, particularly in this moment of divine intervention, serves as a powerful testament to the relentless pursuit of God. It is a narrative that speaks to the heart of every believer and non-believer alike, a tale that echoes the truth of God's unending love and his passionate desire to save us from ourselves. In Cain's encounter with God, we are reminded that no matter how far we stray, the Lord is always reaching out, always calling us back to him. This story is a clarion call to all who have ears to hear, to turn from the path of sin and embrace the redeeming love of our Creator. As Cain wrestled with the divine warning, we too are called to grapple with the truths of God in our lives. His story is a dramatic portrayal of the internal struggle that rages within each of us, the battle between yielding to divine will and succumbing to our own desires. In this struggle, we find the essence of faith, the journey of trusting, not in our own understanding, but in the wisdom and love of the one who created us. This narrative invites us to reflect on our own lives, to examine our hearts, and to heed the voice of God, calling us to a higher purpose. This encounter in the field was more than a mere conversation. It was a cosmic event, a moment that reverberates through the annals of time. In this exchange, we witness the heart of the gospel, the story of God reaching out to humanity, offering a way out of sin and into a life of righteousness. It's a poignant reminder of the power of choice, the profound impact of our response to God, and the eternal consequences of our decisions. And with any door, he decides that God, we are faced with the ultimate question of life. Will we listen to the voice of our Creator, or will we turn away and follow our own path? And we see that he was found and promised to Jude. For here and since, then each ask more, we see them. The kin goes and Jesus. The words spoken by the Lord were a beacon in the darkness, a guidepost pointing the way to redemption. Yet Cain's heart, ensnared in the web of his own making, was blind to the light of truth. And his decision in this moment was a testament to the profound tragedy of human free will, the ability to choose a path contrary to God's will, even in the face of clear divine guidance. This moment serves as a stark reminder to all the weight of our choices and the responsibility we bear in wielding the gift of free will. As Cain stood in the silence of his decision, the heart of God grieved for the lost potential, for the path of righteousness forsaken. In his infinite love and wisdom, God had offered Cain a way out of the spiral of sin, yet he respected the sacred gift of free will he had bestowed upon his creation. This respect for human autonomy, even in the face of self-destruction, is a profound aspect of God's character, a God who loves deeply, but does not coerce, a God who guides, but does not control. And in this respect lies the essence of divine love, a love that allows for choice, even when that choice leads away from Him. The field where Cain stood, now a witness to this monumental exchange, was hallowed ground, a testament to the moments when the divine touches the human.
In this field, the eternal struggle between sin and righteousness was played out, a drama that continues in the heart of every person.
This narrative invites us to see ourselves in Cain, to recognize our own moments of decision, and to choose wisely.
For in these moments of choice, we determine not just our earthly paths, but our eternal destinies. In Cain's refusal to heed God's warning, we see the stark reality of a heart turned inward, consumed by its own desires, and blind to the truth. This inward turn is the root of all sin, a turning away from the light of God's truth, and embracing the darkness of self-centeredness. It is a journey into the wilderness of the soul, where the guiding stars of divine truth are obscured by the clouds of pride and rebellion. This narrative stands as a cautionary tale, urging us to turn our hearts outward, to look to God for guidance, and to follow the path He has laid before us. The field, a place that once symbolized growth and life, Cain rose against Abel, his brother, propelled by a fury born of envy and resentment. This was not a mere moment of anger, but the culmination of a heart overtaken by darkness, a soul that had wandered far from the light of God's truth. The field, which should have been a place of harvest and joy, became a stage for a tragedy that would forever alter the course of human history. Here Cain, in a moment of overwhelming rage, committed an act that shattered the innocence of the world and set in motion a legacy of sorrow and pain. The air, once filled with the gentle rustling of crows, was now thick with the tension of impending doom, a palpable signal of the horror that was about to unfold. His act, a brother slaying his brother, is a devastating testament to the destructive power of unchecked envy. It was not just the taking of a life, but the breaking of a bond ordained by God, a desecration of the sacredness of family. In this heinous act, Cain did not only extinguish Abel's life, but he also extinguished the light of brotherhood and love that God had intended to shine in the world. This moment was a stark warning to all of humanity, a dire illustration of how envy, when left to fester in the heart, leads to the darkest of deeds, to a violence that knows no bounds. The serene field, the symbol of brotherly unity and shared toil, became a chilling scene of fratricide, the soil greedily drinking Abel's blood as it spilled upon it. The confrontation, stark and brutal, unfolded as Cain, consumed by a maelstrom of envy, unleashed his wrath upon Abel. The violence of his actions was shocking, a gruesome display of the corrupting power of sin. For Abel, innocent and unsuspecting, is caught in the deadly grip of his debtor's rage. The ferocity with which Cain struck his brother was a physical manifestation of the inner turmoil that had ravaged his soul. The feud, once a testament to their collaborative labor, was now witnessed in Abel's cries of anguish and Cain's shouts of fury. As Abel fell to the ground, the earth itself seemed to mourn, the skies darkening as if to veil the horror. that had transpired, and the once vibrant field was now marred by the violence enacted upon it.
Abel's body lying motionless, a stark contrast to the life he once embodied.
The blood that stained Cain's hands was a mark of indelible guilt, a reminder of the irreversible step he had taken into the abyss of sin. This bloodshed was not just the end of Abel's life, but the end of Cain's innocence, severing of his bond with God and humanity. In this tragic outcome, the field of confrontation became a testament to the catastrophic consequences of sin. The ground, once fertile and yielding, was now stained with innocent blood, crying out to the heavens for justice. This act of fratricide was a physical manifestation of the spiritual death, that sin brings a death that not only affects the sinner, but also the world around them. Cain's hands, once used for tilling the earth, became instruments of destruction, forever marked by the blood of his own brother. The soil, soaked with the blood of the innocent, bore witness to the grievous act, a silent testament to the brokenness of creation, resulting from man's fall. As this narrative, a chilling account of envy turning into violence, serves as a profound lesson for all who walk the earth. It reminds us that the seeds of sin, when sown in the heart, grow into deeds of unimaginable harm. It is a call to each soul to guard against the subtle enticements of jealousy and hatred, to cling to the virtues of love and brotherhood that God so desires for his children. And for in this story lies the eternal truth that our actions have consequences, not just for ourselves, but for the world we live in and the legacy we leave behind. The stark reality of Abel's lifeless form in the field is a harrowing reminder of the ultimate end of sin, death, despair, and separation from God. In the aftermath of Abel's murder, the field became a haunting symbol of the destructive nature of sin. The silence that followed the act was a deafening testament to the void left by Abel's absence, a void that echoed the spiritual emptiness that now consumed Cain. The scene was a grotesque distortion of God's design for humanity, a perversion of the brotherly love and harmony he had intended. Cain, now a fugitive from his own conscience, was left to wander in the desolation of his making, a soul untethered from the anchor of divine grace. The tragedy of Abel's death is a sobering call to awaken to the realities of sin and its repercussions. It is a dramatic reminder that the path of envy and pride leads only to destruction and despair. And in the horror of that field, we are confronted with the urgent need for repentance and reconciliation with God. Let this narrative stir our hearts to turn from the path of pain, to embrace the way of righteousness, and to seek the face of the Lord, for in his presence alone can we find true peace and restoration. God confronted Cain, his voice resonating with both justice and sorrow, asking, "Where is Abel thy brother?" And this question, simple yet profound, pierced the silence of the aftermath. A divine inquisition that demanded accountability. It was not merely a query for Abel's location. It was affirming of Cain's soul, a call to confront the gravity of his actions. In this solemn moment, God, the righteous judge, sought to awaken Cain's conscience, to bring him face to face with the enormity of his sin. The weight of this question hung heavy in the air, a palpable reminder of the responsibility
that comes with the gift of free will. This was a moment of reckoning where the voice of God echoed, not just in Cain's ears, but through the annals of time, a fine call for each soul to reckon with its own actions.
Cain's response, "Am I my brother's keeper?" echoes through ages, highlighting our societal neglect of compassion. This retort was a deflection, a feeble attempt to evade the piercing truth of God's inquiry. In those few words, Cain revealed the depth of his moral descent, the extent to which sin had corrupted his sense of duty and love. If it said the distinction of building and under territory, this response has reverberated down the corridors of time, a haunting reminder of humanity's tendency to shirk the divine mandate to care for one another. And it stands as a stark testament to our often indifferent hearts, the ease with which we dismiss our responsibility towards our fellow beings. And Cain's words were a reflection of a soul lost in the darkness of its own making, a heart that had turned away from the light of God's love and truth. In this exchange, God's question and Cain's reply encapsulate the eternal struggle between divine accountability and human defiance. It was a moment that made bare the conflict inherent in the human heart, the struggle to accept responsibility for our actions and for the welfare of others. God's question to Cain was not just to him, but for all of humanity, a question that demands an answer from each of us. Is a call to acknowledge our interconnectedness, to recognize that our actions ripple through the fabric of society, impacting lives beyond our immediate scope. This moment was a profound reminder of the interconnected web of life that God has woven, where each thread, each life percent is intrinsically linked to the whole. Cain's attempt to distance himself from his brother's faith was a denial of the fundamental bond that ties all of humanity together. His question, "Am I my brother's keeper?" was a chilling abdication of the sacred duty bestowed upon us by God, the duty to love, protect, and care for one another. This denial was a reflection of a heart turned inwards, consumed by selfishness and apathy. In this moment, Cain became the embodiment of all that is antithetical to God's vision for humanity, a vision of unity, love, and mutual care. And his defiance was a mirror to the soul of humanity, reflecting the often found reluctance to embrace our role as stewards and protectors of our brothers and sisters. The Lord's interaction with Cain in this moment was a profound demonstration of his unceasing quest for justice and truth. In confronting Cain, God was not merely seeking information. He was imparting a lesson on moral responsibility and the consequences of our actions. And this confrontation was a divine exposition of the principle that we are indeed our brother's keeper, that our lives are irrevocably intertwined with those around us. And God's question to Cain stands as an eternal challenge to our often myopic view of our moral and ethical responsibilities. It was a divine call to look beyond our personal interests, to see the image of God in every person, and to act with the love and responsibility that such recognition demands. This profound encounter between Cain and God reverberates as a timeless reminder of the inherent responsibility woven into the fabric of our very being. There's not just a moment in time, but a perpetual lesson echoing through the generations, a reminder that our actions bear consequences that extend far beyond our immediate perception. In Cain's dismissive response, we find the root of so many of society's ills. The refusal to see ourselves as our brother's keeper, the denial of our role in shaping the world for better or worse. Cain's evasion of responsibility, encapsulated in his rhetorical question, was a stark illustration of the human tendency to absolve oneself from the duty of care and compassion. His response was more than an answer. It was an indictment of a heart that had chosen the path of selfishness and denial. In this moment, Cain rejected the fundamental truth that we are all our brother's keeper, that we are called to be a light in each other's lives, to bear one another's burdens, and to foster a spirit of brotherhood and unity. And God's question to Cain, laden with sorrow and a deep sense of loss, was an expression of the divine heartache over humanity's waywardness. And it was a question that echoed the heart of God, a heart that grieves when we stray from his path, a heart that yearns for us to live in harmony and love. This encounter in the fields, marked by Cain's tragic response, stands as a testament to the enduring call of God to each of us, to be our brother's keeper, to be agents of his love and grace in a world marred by sin and division. Cain was cursed to be a fugitive and vagabond, a solemn decree that echoed the severity of his sin. And this curse was a manifestation of divine justice, a rightful response to the grievous act that fratricide. And then in this pronouncement of judgment, there was also a thread of mercy, an emblem of hope in the midst of despair. His God marked Cain for protection, a mark that spoke of God's unyielding grace. Even as Cain faced the consequences of his actions, God's mercy ensured his preservation. This paradox of judgment and mercy is a testament to God's complex nature, the just judge, who is also a compassionate protector. In this divine act, we see the balance of God's character, his commitment to justice tempered by his boundless mercy. The curse often Cain thus becomes a poignant reflection of the divine principle, that while sin brings punishment, there is always room for grace and redemption. This dual aspect of God's nature, his judgment coupled with his mercy, reveals the depths of his character. It shows it even in his righteous anger. God's love and grace remain. The mark of protection on Cain was a symbol of divine restraint, a reminder that while sin necessitates judgment, God's mercy triumphs over wrath. In this profound act, we see a glimpse of the redemptive plan that would fully unfold in the sacrifice of Christ, where ultimate justice and boundless mercy would meet. Ceci arrive et des hommes m'attendent. Ni gros contrôle, plus sur toi tout trouvé, comme au ciel assis, des nerfs carrés. And that he builds a test and of the mercy in the narrative. And Michael, and in question where all the smile is not most in mercy, because the mark set upon Cain by God was not only a sign of protection, but also a symbol of Cain's eternal journey towards redemption. It was a constant reminder of his deed, a call to introspection and change. This mark speaks to the heart of every believer, reminding us that though we may stray, God's grace is sufficient to bring us back. It is a testament to God's unending pursuit of the lost, his relentless desire to reclaim and restore those who have fallen. In Cain's mark, we find the hope of salvation, a beacon guiding us back to the path of righteousness. This symbol of divine mercy becomes a message for all generations, a message that even in our deepest failings, God provides a way back to Him, a mark of His unceasing love and forgiveness. Cain's life, marked by both judgment and mercy, becomes a mirror for our own lives. It reflects the consequences of our actions and the ever-present opportunity for redemption. And this story is a vivid illustration of the eternal truth that our choices shape our destiny. Yet even in our waywardness, God's merciful hand is extended. It is a call to each of us to heed the lessons of Cain's life, to embrace God's justice, and to seek His mercy with a contrite heart. As we reflect on Cain's story, let it stir within us a renewed commitment to walk in righteousness, to live in the light of God's truth, and to find solace in the promise of His mercy. Let us remember that in every moment of judgment, there is an opportunity for mercy. And in every act of repentance, there is a chance for redemption. In the story of Cain, we witness the duality of divine justice, a just retribution for sin, yet a door always open for repentance and return to God's grace. And the tale of Cain serves as a stark reminder of the consequences of the sin, but also as a testament to the unending mercy of our Creator. And it exemplifies the profound truth that God's love is not negated by His justice. Rather, His justice is enveloped in His love. The mark on Cain is a symbol of this enduring truth, that no sin is too great to separate us from the love of God. In this narrative, we are reminded that while God's justice may lead us through the valley of punishment, His mercy offers a path to redemption and hope. In closing, let the story of Cain and Abel be a guiding light in our lives as we tread our paths. Let us carry with us the knowledge of God's unwavering justice and His boundless mercy. And may we live our lives in a manner that honors this truth, striving always to align our actions with God's will. Let us not forget that in each of our stories, much like Cain's, there lies the potential for both sin and salvation, and the choice to embrace God's mercy is always within our reach. Let Cain's story be a caution against envy and a call for responsibility towards others in our modern world. The tale of Cain and Abel is not just an ancient narrative, but a living lesson that resonates through the ages. It is a stark reminder that the seeds of envy, if left unaddressed, can grow into catastrophic consequences. Today, as we navigate a world fraught with comparison and competition, Cain's story urges us to guard our hearts against the destructive forces of jealousy and hatred. And it calls us to remember that the path of envy leads only to destruction and despair, urging us to seek a different path, one of contentment, gratitude, and love. We must choose the path of righteousness, walking in love and humility. In a world that often glorifies self-interest and personal gain, the story of Cain and Abel calls us to a higher standard, a standard of selflessness, compassion, and brotherly love. And it challenges us to look beyond our desires, to care for our neighbors, and to live in a way that honors God. As we reflect on Cain's life, let it be a catalyst for change in our hearts and in our communities, inspiring us to build a world grounded in love, understanding, and mutual respect. This narrative compels us to examine our actions and their impact on those around us, pushing us towards a life of empathy and active care for our fellow beings. In the shadow of Cain's story, we find a profound warning for the present age, a warning against allowing the seeds of envy and strife to take root in our society. It is a call to cultivate a culture of compassion and responsibility, to foster a community where love and care for one another are paramount. This story serves as a clarion call to reject the ways of Cain, to embrace our God-given role as keepers of our brothers and sisters. It is an invitation to live out the commandment, to love our neighbor as ourselves, to be a beacon of God's love in a world often shrouded in darkness. As we ponder the lessons from Cain's life, let us be moved to action. Let this story not just be a tale of warning, but a springboard for transformation. We are called to be agents of change, embodying the love, humility, and righteousness that God desires. In our daily walk, let us choose the path of Abel, a path of faithfulness, service, and devotion. Let Cain's story inspire us to be vigilant in our hearts, to seek God's wisdom in our choices, and to live as lights in a world in need of God's truth and love. Cain's journey, marred by envy and its dire consequences, serves as a powerful metaphor for the struggles we face in our own hearts and in our communities. It is a reminder that the choices we make not only affect our destiny, but also the fabric of our society. In this modern age, where ambition often overshadows empathy, let us remember the value of compassion, the strength in kindness, and the power of selfless love. Let us choose to be architects of a future where unity and understanding triumph over division and strife. The path of righteousness,
illuminated by the lessons of Cain and Abel, beckons us to walk in the light of understanding and peace.
it is a journey that demands our courage to confront our own shortcomings, to extend grace to others, and to live in a manner worthy of our calling. As we embrace this path, let us be guided by the wisdom of the Almighty,
finding strength in His Word and solace in His promises.
in doing so, we honor the legacy of Abel and transform the curse of Cain into a blessing for generations to come. In the light of Cain's story, let us recommit ourselves to the path of righteousness. Let us be diligent in tending the garden of our hearts, uprooting the weeds of envy, and planting seeds of love and compassion. And in our interactions, let us reflect the love of Christ, showing mercy and grace to those around us. And may our lives be a testament to the transformative power of God's love, a beacon of hope in a world that desperately needs the light of His truth. As we close this chapter on Cain and Abel, let us carry forward the lessons learned. Let us be mindful of the impact of our actions, the weight of our words, and the importance of our choices. In a world where the echoes of Cain's choice still resonate, let us choose a better way. The way of love, the way of peace, and the way of Christ. Let this story inspire us, challenge us, and change us as we journey together towards a brighter,
more compassionate world